Access denied. But the weather is kind of hot here, but maybe the parking lot is not so nice.
It's pretty hot, man. I'm dripping sweat right now. It's kind of gross.
Korea, can it be this hot also?
Yeah, it's this hot right now in Korea. Well, unless it's raining. We have monsoon season 2, but the summer is ridiculous.
So, how's Gamescom been for you?
Gamescom has been awesome. It's so huge. There's so many people here. A lot of great and cool fans are just being really nice when they come and meet us. And the games, though, have been so epic. Like, we get more cheeses in the finals of a GSL than this whole tournament has had so far. It's just been like long macro games every time, so that's been a blast. The foreigners are doing really well. It's just been like a perfect event.
Talking about cheeses, do you enjoy seeing cheeses at some points, or like do you always prefer macro games?
No, I don't always prefer it. I do want to see some because it's like illogical and bad to do just macro, even though that's like the type of game I prefer to play and prefer to watch most of the time. But I definitely like to see like interesting cheeses and like just every now and then just a crazy all-in, because it keeps people honest and makes the game better.
Would you say that this Gamescom, if you include the open bracket, is the hardest tournament in StarCraft 2 history?
I mean, it's a good question. It's definitely a very, very hard tournament, but I think I have to go with like Code.se overall, where it's like, you know, like for instance, this recent Code.se, I would say that might have been like the hardest, because it's like literally the top 32 players minus maybe 2 or 3 that either didn't make it in from Korea, or you know, a few foreigners that might be up there as well. But as far as like tournaments overseas, this is definitely one of the highest skilled ones that there's been. I mean, Young Juan, ST, MVP, MC, the list goes on and on. There's like so many top end guys. It's definitely one of the hardest foreign events that there's ever been.
Do you think that Western players have an advantage of this kind of events, not only it being in Europe or in America, but also that it's so many games in a row, and maybe in GSL the Koreans have more advantage because they can prepare more, or how do you see it, look at it?
Well, the foreigners are more used to an event like this because there's not many events outside of Korea that have it the same way as inside of Korea. So basically the foreigners are always playing events where it's like a marathon, you play everybody, and I mean, that's hard in its own ways, whereas the Koreans, like the very top end ones, you can see it, like they want to prepare for the match. Like Nesty doesn't actually deliver outside of Korea very well. You know, he didn't make it. You know, he didn't get deep at all in this tournament. But at the same time, he's like one of the most accomplished in the world in GSL, where he has time to prepare for someone. So I think it just matters what type of player, because then you look at MC and it's like, well, he just crushes both of them. And MVP, I mean, you just can't stop that guy.
No.
So I don't know if they have an advantage, but they're definitely more used to it.
All right. A lot of things happening right now. We have the Artosis Swarm coming up. We have seen a lot of team transfers or player transfers. But I want to ask about the Kespa and GAM. How do you see the Korean scene at this state?
It looks like they're starting to really work together, and I think it's going to be basically OGN, which is from Kespa basically. They never did it alone, really. Maybe right in the very beginning for a minute, but NBC Game was around. So there was 2 stations that made enough content and enough games and stuff that it could actually hold up the industry. But OGN can't do that alone, and GAM can't do that alone, as far as Korea goes. So I think they're just going to work together like NBC used to, because there just is no NBC anymore, for gaming at least. And I mean, that's great. That's great. That means both players from both sides are going to play in both leagues, and we're already seeing that with the OSL qualifiers, with the WCS going on. We have some of these new matches coming out where the Kespa players play the GAM players, and that's really good to see them work together.
All right. We saw an agreement between GAM and Kespa about signing players. Gonna be, you can't draft players for 1 year, and then maybe they will go into some solidified pro license or something like that. At the same time, we saw Kespa and MLG signing a contract. Do you think it was necessary for Kespa, if they want to go abroad, to have a partner like that to get some control?
You know, that's hard to say. I'm not sure exactly what the two are going to offer each other in terms of how does this really truly help or work out. I don't know if Kespa actually just can't do other events other than MLG, but I kind of doubt those are things. I think it's more of like a working together type of thing, like they're going to have each other's backs or something, but I don't really know. And do they need that? Well, I mean, Kespa's never really worked with foreigners or foreign events, so they need to do something, and to just have a friend like MLG that, you know, obviously is one of our biggest leagues outside of Korea, that'll help them, no doubt.
In StarCraft 2, during maybe 1 year into the game, we saw a lot of Western teams signing Korean player, and there were some drama, maybe Puma and some of the TSL players. And do you think that might hurt the MLG-Kespa relationship? Let's say one of the bigger guys goes and EG signs them, or something like that.
I don't think that that's actually going to happen, because in Kespa, every single player is actually contracted to Kespa and to the team. Whereas at the beginning of StarCraft 2, the way it works in Korea is really trust and honor based, and a lot of the teams didn't have anyone under contract. They just, this is the team and you're not going to betray it because that's the way it is. And then the kids get offered money and they're like, oh my god, it's a lot of money, and they just go for it. So that's why that stuff was happening. That's never going to happen with Kespa involved, because they just keep everything contracted tight, and they don't have the option to do something like that.
Do you prefer it that way, or do you think it was okay how it developed in StarCraft 2?
I mean, it worked out in the end how it developed. There was drama, of course, as you mentioned, but yeah, I think if you're a player that's gaining things from a team, you should probably be contracted with that team and not be jumping around all the time. I mean, that's just professional, and it's good for you, it's good for the team, it's for them to put a lot of money into you and then have you switch over at the drop of a dime. You know, I don't think that's good for anyone, really. So I like that that's going to basically stop, and we're going to have, like, you know, if the team is providing for this player and he has a contract and this team wants it, you have to buy out that contract, and it has to be a mutual agreement.
For those who hasn't followed the Kespa so closely, me included, is it the right impression that I got that teams put players up for draft, but the players that don't put up for draft, they cannot, they still have in the roster, they cannot lose them to anyone else?
Kind of a little bit. It's actually kind of complicated. For instance, in StarCraft 1, there would be tournaments to get into the draft, and if you get drafted, you get a pro license, basically. Well, you had to...
The Courage.
In the Courage events, they give you that pro license that you need to enter the draft, and then there would be an actual draft of the players. Now, there are certain things where you can, you know, some people sign multi-year contracts, you know, like, for instance, if you have Nada on your team, you sign him to a many years contract, but certain players have had problems with this, because some players were getting stuck in contracts, you know, where it's like, well, I'm really good now, much better than when I signed a 3-year contract 2 years ago or something. So there became different levels of, like, oh, if you played this many games, you've been a pro this many years, this type of thing, that you could go out as a free agent, but if you didn't get picked up by another team, your contract bought out basically, then your other team could take you back in and cut your pay a little bit or something like that. I forget the exact numbers behind it, but I mean, it made a lot of sense when they did it, and I mean, once it got in full swing, it only happened a few times before the beta came out, so I didn't follow it a ton. So it could have changed a little bit, but I mean, it made sense.
I spoke earlier to Nick about EMG, and he signed from the beginning, and you signed kind of recently, maybe 1 month ago, something like that. Just what made you go with EMG?
You know, I really explored all my options. I looked into everything. A lot of people were talking to me at the time about various things like this, and I'm someone that takes a long time to think things out and really figure out what I want. And you know, I have a family, I have a daughter, and so I have to be really careful with any decision I make professionally. So I just, you know, I thought about it for a long time. I weighed every single option. Eventually I decided I really thought that they would be best for me.
Talking about being a father, kind of big thing. Also, we have seen you travel a lot, doing a lot of events. Is that hard to you, or is it working out okay?
You know, it's working out okay. It is hard to do. Just even if I didn't have that going on, it's still, I mean, on Nick, it's very hard as well, because it's like the travel, living in hotels, living on airplanes. It's a tough thing, but you know, I travel a lot, so every several events, you know, like just for instance in Australia, I brought my wife and daughter, and you know, that made it a lot easier. And of course, that's going to cost me some amount of money, but it like helps me keep my sanity to not always be on the road away. But I mean, they understand. Well, I guess as much as a baby can understand, but she understands, and it works out. You know, it's my job, it's what I do, it pays the bills.
Yeah, we're gonna switch to part 2, a short one.